We got started because we wanted to solve a problem that we ourselves had as PhD students, and that was just managing the research papers that we had on our hard drives. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if there was software that could automatically extract all of that information from the research papers that you had? And so we built software that does that, that automatically identifies the title, author, volume, journal, issue, page numbers, and citations and keywords from the research papers on your hard drive. And the second idea was, well, if academics are using our software to extract that information, we can connect these academics and start crowdsourcing that information and build an open database of research that we can make available to the academic community. And because the data is crowdsourced, it has a social component, meaning that you can do what Amazon does for books. You can say, well, people who have read this book have also read that book. And on Mendeley, it's people who have read this research paper have also read that research paper. And so basically, now 2 years after launching, we have crowdsourced the world's largest research database. It now contains about 70 million documents, and it's available under Creative Commons license for other people to play with it and develop applications on top of it. And that's really quite revolutionary, because that type of academic information wasn't available to anybody before, because it's all locked up behind paywalls and it's owned by publishing companies. And we've just launched what we call the Mendeley API binary battle. So we've offered a prize to developers of $10,001, hence binary battle, if they write great applications that make use of our data and thereby make research more collaborative and open. We've got some really cool judges for that contest. For example, Tim O'Reilly, Werner Vogels, who's the CTO of Amazon, John Wilbanks, who's the VP for Science at Creative Commons. We got James Powell, who is the CTO of Thomson Reuters, judging these applications, and we're really hoping to see developers come up with great ideas of mashing up academic data with anything. I mean, clearly the internet has made a lot of information instantaneously available to anyone, and that includes scientific information. But perhaps surprisingly, and I've mentioned that earlier, a lot of academic information is still locked up behind paywalls. So if you're not at an academic institution, you'll have a hard time actually getting access to any full-text content. Maybe in the life sciences you have PubMed, but apart from that, it's really difficult to get access to scientific content if you are not a researcher at an academic institution. And even if you are, you'll still not have access to everything. I've read a study that researchers at American institutions who are well funded still only get about 50% of the content that they need through their academic subscriptions, institutional subscriptions that their libraries have purchased. And that was certainly my experience. I cobbled together a lot of papers by Googling for preprints and working papers, by emailing friends at other institutions asking if they had access to a database and could send me a copy, or even by emailing the original author of a paper and asking if they could send me a copy. So a lot could be done to improve access to scientific content, and that's not restricted to the third world or developing countries. It's really everybody that needs better access to academic research. I think social discovery really is the key to that. People today are discovering news stories and music and movies and games by just following their friends on Facebook and on Twitter, seeing what they're reading and listening to and playing. And in research, it's still largely based on conversations that people have over lunch. It's your fellow PhD students telling you about this paper that they've just read, which is great, and that you should be reading. And otherwise online, it's just limited to search right now. And we want to change that by putting you in touch with like-minded researchers, people who are interested in the same things as you are, and then showing you what they are reading, which might then also be interesting to you. And we also want to incorporate recommendation algorithms. So based on your existing library, we want to tell you which other papers might be interesting to you because other people like you have found them interesting. Well, in the publishing community, I think it's people who are experimenting with new models of peer review. I mean, peer review really is the gatekeeper to science and what gets published. And traditionally, journals have prided themselves on having high rejection rates. And Paul Lauterbur, a Nobel Prize winner in medicine, said you could write the entire history of science in the past 50 years in terms of papers that have been rejected by Science and Nature. And I think that says a lot about, this gatekeeping function. And it simply came out of space restraints. You only had a limited number of pages that you could fill in the journal. But in the internet age, of course, that's not true anymore. And so publishers like the Public Library of Science are putting out journals like PLOS ONE, where the instruction to reviewers is not to judge whether a paper will have incremental or substantial impact, but simply whether it's methodologically and technically sound. And if it fulfills those criteria, it'll get published, and the judgment whether it'll really be useful and whether it'll have impact is left to the academic community at large. And that model is now being copied by some of the traditional publishers, and I think it could have a tremendous impact on science in the next couple of decades. In research, it's probably Craig Venter and his company Synthetic Genomics. They've made headlines last year by announcing that they had created the first artificial microorganism in a lab. Of course, Craig Venter is also famous for having decoded the human genome. And I was fortunate enough to sit next to Juan Enriquez, who's one of the co-founders of Synthetic Genomics, at a dinner recently. And what he told me about the potential applications of synthetic biology in completely revolutionizing fields like energy and medicine, especially personalized medicine, are just mind-blowing. So those are the things that I find really exciting. We want to make research more open, more collaborative and more transparent. And we hope to achieve that both by providing the research community with our own tools, workflow and collaboration tools, but hopefully also by the tools that other people build with the crowdsourced research data that we're making available to the community.